things I love about technology when it works is the ability to play favorite things over and over and over again. It used to be, remember, older folks, remember records? You know, if you wanted to listen to it again, you had to kind of move the arm, wear things out. But whenever you have a favorite song or something, nowadays you just hit repeat, and it goes and goes and goes. I love it. I don't know if you've been listening closely to the second reading over the last 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, but if you have, you've noticed something. The church is stuck on repeat. We've heard the same passages from Paul's letter to the Philippians at least 3 of the last 4 Sundays. There's something there that the church is trying to tell us. To me, I think this is the heart of Christian discipleship, the message that we heard today in that second reading. If you would give me joy, if you would let me find peace, if you would be the best followers of Christ you can be, here's how to do it. Put everyone else's needs ahead of your own. Think of everyone else as more important than yourself. Be like Christ who poured himself out completely for everyone else. That's the heart of Christian discipleship. A friend of mine who worked for many years for Habitat for Humanity likes to tell the story of a young widow who had 4 children, struggling, and they built a house for her through Habitat. And he remembers walking through this house with her after all the work that she and the kids had put in on the house along with all the volunteers. And as they walked through the house, she said, okay, 2 of the kids are going to be in this room, and the 3rd child is going to be in this room, and the oldest daughter is going to be in this room. And my friend turned to her and said, it's only a 3-bedroom house. Where are you going to go? And she said, these kids have been through so much. It's more important that they have the rooms. I'll get a futon. Put everyone else's needs ahead of your own. I don't know about you, I'm not there yet. How do we get there? And I think that's where the other readings today really can help us out. It's not about just talking about being a follower of Christ, it's actually doing it. In the first reading in Ezekiel, those who have been living a sinful life but now turn and do the will of the Father, they find salvation, regardless of what anybody else thinks. It's the doing of God's will that matters, not just talking about it. The famous parable that we heard in the gospel, the 2 sons. What parent in the assembly doesn't recognize those 2 children? Go do this. I will not. No. Okay. And the other one says, okay, yeah, sure. Wanders off. We've all been there. Our kids have all been there. Our grandkids have all been there. There wasn't a parent in his audience that didn't recognize it either. But Christ was making such an important point. It's the doing. The question he asks the chief priests and the scribes is not which one said the right thing. Yes, Dad, I'll go. It's which one did the Father's will. When everything else was done, which one did it? Our Holy Father, Pope Francis, says something very similar in his document on the joy of the gospel. Pope Francis says, reading the scriptures makes it abundantly clear that the gospel is not merely about our personal relationship with God. Both Christian preaching and Christian life are meant to have an impact on society. An impact, a very real doing of God's will. There is a cost to discipleship. There's a very famous Lutheran theologian who died in a concentration camp, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who wrote a book from prison called The Cost of Discipleship. And he gets very graphic as well. And he says, if you would be a disciple, here are some things that you have to do. When you see someone in need who is naked, clothe them. When you see someone in need who is hungry, feed them. When you see someone who is homeless, give them a place to live. It's practical, it's concrete, and it is the doing of the word. We are called to be more than yes people. It's easy to say, as the chief priests and the scribes did. We want to follow God. We are trying to do God's will. But what Christ is telling them is, you're saying the right words, but you're not doing anything about it. John called you to repentance. He called you to change. He called you to conversion. And you didn't. You simply go through the same observances day in and day out without any concrete impact on the world around you. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes that we heard about both in prophet Ezekiel and in the gospel, they heard the word. They said yes to God and then acted accordingly, doing the will of God. How well are we doing? This coming week, maybe we can pray and reflect and meditate on our own lives. What are the concrete ways that we can find in our lives, in the family, at school, at work, where someone else's needs take priority over our own? Where we decide to sleep on the futon and let someone else have the bed? How are we doing? Which son are we most like? Yes, Dad, or I will not. And then go do it. The choice is ours.